Phillips curve and money market are the ones that show up most often on the AP exam. If you know, basically what we were talking about in the poster back there, if you know that left side of the poster, it's that like a 2.5 on the AP exam. Add a little bit of logic and a little bit of that right side, and there's your 3. And that's what we're going for here. All right, so we just discussed here fiscal policy. And we'll do this all for an increase in aggregate demand. You guys are smart enough to realize that if we were just decrease at AD, we go in the opposite direction. So all of this was, we'll try and have this, so increase AD. So for fiscal policy, basically the expansionary fiscal policy lead us into that budget deficit. What will we do?
Lower taxes.
Lower taxes. And then increase government spending. All right, so I'll start abbreviating here to start going a little bit faster. And with monetary policy, yes, better. Monetary policy, this loose money, this expansionary monetary policy, what are we going to do?
Buy bonds.
And the only place you can buy them is on the
Open
market. Good. And then what do we do?
Discount rate.
Decrease the discount rate. And what is the definition? What is the definition of the discount rate?
The rate of the Federal Reserve loaning money to banks.
Very good. It's the interest rate. The discount rate is the interest rate at which the Federal Reserve will loan money to other banks. Remember, this is always in frame of reference of the Federal Reserve, as the Federal Reserve buying these bonds. It is the interest rate at which the Federal Reserve loans money to other banks. The AP exam is also, on one of the FRQs they asked, I believe they wanted students to define the federal funds rate. What's the federal funds rate, guys?
Bank to bank. Bank to bank.
It's the interest rate, for bank-to-bank lending. Interest rate for bank-to-bank lending. All right, so we have to increase AD. We can either use the expansionary fiscal policy, decreasing taxes, increase government spending, or the expansionary or loose money policy, buy bonds, decrease the discount rate, decrease the reserve ratio. So I want to show how this would essentially affect a couple of different graphs here. First we'll have we'll do the ADAS graph. And again, we'll just do this whole recessionary period. QF, quantity of full employment. Our LRAS showing our potential output. Our current level of output is less than our potential. So this economy is in a
recession.
All right. I will continue to repeat it and beat this into you guys. We got our real GDP output down here. And we'll show how this will relate to our Phillips curve. And on the Phillips curve, we have the short run Phillips curve and the long run Phillips curve. What's over on here on the vertical axis?
Inflation.
Inflation rate.
Yeah.
And down here?
Rate of unemployment.
Unemployment rate. All right. So what number? Because remember, these are all number lines down here. That's that's 0 or that's 0 down here. What would be the appropriate number to fall under the long run Phillips curve?
4 to 5.
4 to 5%. What is that 4 to 5%? What does that represent?
Natural rate of unemployment.
The natural rate of unemployment. I'll just put kind of an NRU right here. NRU to abbreviate that. NRU, the natural rate of unemployment. And yeah, I heard someone shouting it out already. I'll just ask real quickly, why is our natural rate of unemployment this whole idea of 4 to 5%? If we're at 4 to 5% unemployment, that is considered to be full employment. That would be our, the NRU, natural rate of unemployment, right there. Why is it 4 to 5% unemployment and not 0?
Yeah. Frictional structural.
Because of the whole idea of frictional unemployment. I'll just NRU, that whole idea of QF, full employment, equals 4 to 5% due to the two types of naturally occurring unemployment. So the natural types are, what are they?
Frictional and structural.
So frictional and structural are two natural types. And what is frictional?
Going from job to job.
Going from job to job. Nice. When you're in between jobs. So I'm not laughing. I like your enthusiasm. That's what I like. I like it. So in between jobs. So if you were to move from Florida to California and you're looking for that job, if you move on a Friday, the odds of you getting a job on Monday very low. So while you're looking for that job, you're frictionally unemployed. You're in between jobs. You're causing that friction in between jobs. What's structural unemployment? What's that? The milkman. Milkman is structurally unemployed. Your skills are no longer needed by the economy. Skills. No longer needed. The example, yes, the milkman. Blockbuster employee.
Cool boy.
Yeah. Oh. Do you have a question? You just stretching? Okay. And all right, go ahead, shout it out. I hear you guys say. What's cyclical unemployment? Yes. So the cyclical unemployment.
Factory shut down.
Yes, cyclical unemployment is when we want what you're making, we're just not buying it. When the factories shut down, sure.
Like Twinkies.
Dude.
I think they went through like market restructuring or something. I don't know. I think they're still making. I think Hostess is still operational here. So factories shut down is cyclical. This is the bad one. That's the bad one. So on the AP exam, they've asked like multiple choice questions. They could say, all right, if you're given this image here, what a period of a recession, they could ask you, what is a realistic, they gave you this image right here, what would be a realistic unemployment rate? If they said, for this image right here, if they said, A, 2%, B, 4%, C, 6%, D can't be determined, E, whatever, I have no idea. Won't be paying attention. So yeah, it would be, you would indicate that of C. But then what if there was a follow-up question that said, how much, if they said, okay, that's your answer of being C is 6%, and the follow-up question was, how much cyclical unemployment was occurring, then you just basically say, oh, okay, if the unemployment rate is that of 6%, and they tell you that the natural rate isn't between 4 to 5, they tell you that it's only 4%, they say it's only 4%, then you can determine that there's 2% cyclical unemployment. They've had other questions like, what type of unemployment exists during the period of equilibrium, and you have to be able to say that it's going to be, you're always going to have frictional and structural unemployment, even at equilibrium. Even at some of the best times in our economy in 1999, unemployment rates going down to in the 3%, 3 point whatever percent, there is still frictional and structural unemployment. Just basically no cyclical. All right, so how do we signify this recessionary period here? Red dot for recession there. How do we signify a recession on the Phillips curve?
With the LRPC to the right.
Move the dot down to the right on the SR.
Dot to the right. Dot to the right.
Yeah.
So the LRPC is going to move. It's just the dot. The dot will move. So the dot. The dot signifies our economy, much like how the dot up here signifies where our economy is. This dot over here is going to signify where our economy is, and this will indicate a recession. And why does this show a recession?
High unemployment.
High levels of unemployment. The unemployment rate is higher than that of our natural rate of 4 to 5%. And finally, I think I said I was going to show you how this relates to the money market. So we'll draw this one out. Money market graph here. Money supply, money demand. Quantity of money and nominal interest rates. All right. Bless you.
Helps.
How do we show a recession on the money market graph? Can't. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. All right. You can. I was trying to trick you. You can't show a recession here on the money market graph. So, on the last section here that we're doing, we went over crowding out and the net export effect. We showed how fiscal policy can be used to increase aggregate demand. Aggregate demand is equal to
GDP.
Okay, yes, equal to nominal. Yeah, you can say 80 equals that of nominal GDP. It's actually a very long formula, but it's also what I was referencing is C plus G plus I sub G plus net exports. All right. I like that marker that does. So let's look at it instead of saying, hey, using fiscal policy, we know that if we increase government spending, 80 comes up. If we decrease taxes, consumption will come up, whatever. Instead, let's look at how monetary policy can affect these graphs. So monetary policy is going to be used, bless you, monetary policy is going to be used to move the money supply line. Federal Reserve conducts monetary policy, so we can look at it and say they're trying to, in this case, monetary policy, this would all be increasing the supply of money. Let's say that the Federal Reserve were to buy bonds. That would increase the money supply. And when we're looking at the money supply, they're basically referencing the M1. M1. And what is M1 made up of?
Cash and flow in the hands of the public.
And checkable
Money in the
deposits.
public.
All right, so checkable deposits or demand deposits. And cash in hands of public. So remember, in hands of public, it is not the stuff in bank vaults. It's in a bank vault, not included in the M1 money supply. So let's look at buying bonds. Why would, if the Federal Reserve were to buy bonds, why would that cause the supply of money or the money supply to increase? So all of this, all these things right here would cause there to be an increase in the money supply line. So let's look at why each one of these would cause the M1 money supply to go up. So let's pretend that we have some bonds. I think my cash is being used to prop up the camera here. Thanks. All right, so Yes, that? All right, fair enough. And this there. There we go. Whatever. All right, so thanks for playing along with me here. Everybody's got their cameras on you now, so. Right. Yeah, right? Excellent. So we have here the M1 money supply. Let's pretend that you are the Federal Reserve. I am the general public. All right. The Federal Reserve is going to buy bonds. The Federal Reserve is going to buy bonds.
And buy your bonds.
Yes. So you're taking cash that's out of the Federal Reserve in a bank vault, and if it's in a bank vault, it's not part of the money supply. Take it out. You then buy basically sheets of paper from me. So sheets of paper and leaving whatever, but then you're giving me cash. This cash is now in the hands of the public. So it went from a bank vault, not part of it, to cash in the hands of the public. That works. Increases the M1 money supply. All right. Why would a decrease in the discount rate? Why would a decrease in the discount rate cause the money supply to increase? Well, what was the discount rate again? What's the definition?
Federal Reserve interest rate going down to
Federal Reserve. Yeah, it's the interest rate at which the Federal Reserve loans money to other banks. So let's pretend that the Federal Reserve has lowered the discount rate, which they have done now for years to banks, basically down to nothing. The interest rate is next to nothing. Banks are more likely to borrow money, so they'll go ahead and they'll borrow more money. So we have our banker here. The bank has borrowed lots and lots of money. Banks now have all this excess reserves. When they have these excess reserves, they're just sitting there. So far, the bank's borrowing this money has not changed the money supply. What needs to occur for the money supply to go up? What do banks need to do with that money?
Give it
They
out.
need to loan it out. When loans are issued, money is created. When loans are issued, money is created. So if banks have all these excess reserves, they hopefully, the goal, when they have these excess reserves, are to loan it out. Hi, banker, can I borrow some money? Yay! So you have these excess reserves. I borrow the money. There are more money in the hands of the public now. There you go. Money supply goes up. What's that? Get out of here. Whatever. Finally, the last thing we can look at here is the reserve requirement. Banks are required to hold on to a... Yes?
So I think there's a question on the last test where it's like, how does it change the money supply?
I'm sorry.
How does it affect long-term and short-term GDP growth? Go over that after.
Yeah, well, I will answer how do these interest rates affect long-term growth. The long-term growth is going to be referenced through I sub G, that capital. That's what they're really referencing, because increases in capital will affect businesses buying capital. That means that they could, if there are more factories out there, they're purchasing more factories, that will mean that the long-run aggregate supply line, if businesses are buying more capital because interest rates are cheap and they borrow lots of money, that will cause the LRAS to increase. So long-run growth will go up. But I'm going to get to that whole process here. So if through monetary policy we see the Federal Reserve reduces the reserve requirement, banks are no longer required to hold on to as much in deposits. So if this banker here doesn't have to hold on to as much in deposit, they don't have as much required reserves. If required reserves go down, what happens to excess reserves? It goes up, and a bank can lend out whatever they have in excess reserves. Yeah, so if they have more excess reserves, they can loan out more money. So again, if discount rates lowered, public can go out and borrow more money. So we're seeing how we're seeing how a decrease in the reserve requirement, a decrease in the discount rate, or the Federal Reserve buying bonds, we're seeing how each one of these will increase the money supply. So right here in this class, remember, a rightward shift is an increase. If the supply of money or money supply increases, money is becoming less rare. If something's less rare, should it cost more or less to get it?
Less.
Cost less to get it, and that's what's going on here. Money's becoming less rare, so it should cost less to get it. What's the definition of interest again?
Cost of borrowing money.
Cost of borrowing money. So as money becomes less rare, it costs less to get it. As it costs less to get money, what will happen what will businesses and households do? If it costs less to borrow money,
They'll borrow more.
businesses and households will borrow more money. And if businesses and households are borrowing more money,
AD goes up.
AD will go up. Yes, we're going to see that if businesses are borrowing more money, that's going to cause gross investment to go up. If households are borrowing more money, that's going to cause consumption to go up. As gross investment increases, or as consumption increases, that will cause AD to rise. AD comes up here. Say it goes all the way up there. Two things occur. Price levels increase and
Real GDP.
real GDP output increases. How would this increase in AD, or the increase in the money supply, which causes an increase in gross investment and consumption, how would this be signified, this movement of an increase in AD, how would this be signified on the Phillips curve?
The dot moves up to the left.
Dot moves to the left along the curve. You're seeing that price levels go up. Price levels going up is the same as inflation going up. There's a direct relationship between price level and inflation. So as price levels go up, inflation comes up. We'll see the little dot kind of traveling up a little bit. And you're seeing that real GDP output has increased. As real GDP output increases, what happens to unemployment?
Goes down.
It goes down. So we'll see unemployment coming down. Yay! So we're reaching equilibrium here. Equilibrium is that intersection between AS and AD along the LRAS. And here we go. Equilibrium being at that point where the economy intersects the long-run Phillips curve at 4 to 5% unemployment with nice low levels of inflation. So the question earlier was, how would expansionary monetary policy affect long-run growth? We know that as the discount rate, reserve requirement, buying bonds, whatever, lowers interest rates, we'll see that businesses go out and purchase more capital. As businesses purchase more capital, all right, I'm going to start shorthanding things here. As businesses purchase more capital, they have the ability to produce more. So you would actually see eventually that I sub G is one of the only components that actually has the potential of moving all three lines. We saw before that to increase the LRAS, we can increase capital. And if you increase the LRAS, it's going to also increase aggregate supply. But we know that I sub G, as businesses purchasing capital, is also part of AD. So if capital is purchased, you're going to see that the LRAS will increase. Long run growth will increase. You'll go from this potential output level exam, this one right here. So the two axes for the ADS graph, what's the vertical axis?
Price level.
That's right, you got just a lot of interaction here, that's what we're looking for. And the bottom?
Real GDP output.
Real GDP output. Real gross domestic product output, all right. We got a downward sloping
AD.
aggregate demand, upward sloping aggregate supply. This comes down here. The AP exam has made changes. They're starting to label this down here. They're starting to use Y instead of Q. Some people put QF for quantity of full employment. The AP exam is starting to put Y. You can have that, doesn't really matter. I'll just put it as Q because that's what I'm used to. Now, the AP exam likes to use this graph quite often to show recessionary periods, inflationary periods, or equilibrium. The way that we can signify this, how would we signify a recessionary period using the ADAS graph? What would we need to do? Yeah.
You draw the LRAS to the right of where those two lines meet.
There you go. So you'd have the LRS right over here. So to show a recessionary period, we're having this as, label this as QF is our quantity at full employment. Here is our LRAS. The LRAS, what does that LRAS represent?
The economy.
Potential. So this right here is our potential output. The LRAS shows our potential output at quantity of full employment, meaning that if we have all of our goods and services, if we're using all of our resources properly, allocatedly efficient here, if we're using all of our resources, we have the potential to make this much output. We have the aggregate demand, aggregate supply lines that can be manipulated in order to reach that full employment. How do we move these lines? Well, there are formulas that go along with these two. For aggregate demand, help me out guys, what does aggregate demand equal?
Consumption.
Consumption, X of N, government spending.
Yeah, there is no real order, so yeah, there's just I sub G, gross investment, C, consumption, G, government spending, and X for net exports. Now, each of these components basically stand for something on its own. I sub G. What is I sub G?
Investments.
All right, it stands for gross investment, and it, realistically, what is it? It's businesses purchasing capital. So I sub G essentially is just when a private domestic business purchases capital. So and C, what is C?
Consumption.
It's basically, yes, consumption stands for consumption. It's households purchasing goods and services. That's it. And finally, next G. What's G?
Government spending.
Government spending. And then X sub N. What's the, all right, it stands for net exports, but what's the formula for it?
Imports plus exports.
Exports minus imports. Why would it be exports minus imports?
Exports is us taking in money.
Exports contribute to the economy.
Exports contribute to the economy. They're positive. It's us selling our product to another country, whereas imports is a leakage. Remember, exports are that injection, that's money flowing into our economy. Imports are a leakage, it's money leaving our economy. So we have the ability to increase aggregate demand. Remember in this class, an increase is always a shift to the right. Increase is always a shift to the right. We have the ability to increase aggregate demand by increasing any one of these components here. You could increase business purchase of capital, ISG or gross investment. Households could go out and purchase more goods and services, increasing consumption. Government could go out and spend more money, pushing us into more into a deficit by increasing their government spending. Or we could have an increase in our exports by having foreigners purchase more of our goods and services. What's the relationship with aggregate supply?
The component.
Well, it's not necessarily components, but what is there's a relationship that goes on. say we want to try and increase aggregate supply, have a shift to the right, aggregate supply shifts to the right. So if we were to try and increase aggregate supply, say aggregate supply increases, would mean would mean that, yeah, price levels would go down, output would go up, but what do we need to have occur?
Increase in technology.
Okay, increased technology,
Education.
capital, productivity, right. But what's,
Decrease
there we go, that's what I'm looking for, a decrease in the cost of production. So increased aggregate supply essentially would occur from a decrease in cost of production. And the way that we could reach that decrease in cost production were all those things that you started yelling out. Go ahead, shout out some stuff again.
Technology, education, capital.
Yeah, increases in basically the technology, education, number of resources, bless you, capital,
What's the fifth one?
yeah, so
Efficiency.
efficiency, yeah, productivity, all that stuff. So if you were to increase, any of these, it would increase aggregate supply. Now, if you were to increase any of these right here, technology, education, capital, number of resources, efficiency, productivity, not only would it increase aggregate supply, but what else would it increase? Not rhetorical. LRAS, yes. The long run, yes. This would also cause the long run aggregate supply line to increase. So if we were to see the long run, if the long run aggregate supply line increases, you're also going to see the short run aggregate supply line increase as well. If we have more technology that enables us to make more, you're going to see that we have the potential of making more, so the LRAS moves out. Remember, the LRAS shows what we have the ability to produce, the potential to produce. If we have more capital, where there are more factories, more machines out there that enable us to make more stuff, we're going to have that potential of making more. Now, aggregate supply can increase on its own without moving the LRAS. If we see, can anybody tell me what would occur here? What needs to occur in order to have just aggregate supply increase without the LRAS moving?
Decrease in business tax?
There you go, nice, business taxes. So business taxes would affect the cost of production. Business taxes have the ability to affect the cost of production without allowing us to produce more. Now the AP exam sometimes gets off onto long tangents and say, what will happen in the long run? Well, business taxes enable a corporation to have more funds available that they can do it. Now, if you make the assumption that, yes, this company has more money, they'll be able to take that money and then reinvest it in, say, capital. And if that's the case, if the company that's saving that money because they're not paying the taxes, if they use that money to then go purchase more capital or open up more factories, then they would increase the LRS. But simply by changing business taxes, it'll affect the cost of production. It won't affect the long run aggregate supply line. Cool.
Sign this.
Anybody else need to sign in? One of them. So, any questions so far? We have the basic components here of what makes up aggregate demand, the basic relationship of aggregate supply, and the components here of LRS, and the relationship between the LRS and aggregate supply. We know that the LRAS shows our potential output. We know that the intersection between the short run aggregate supply line and aggregate demand, that indicates where our economy is currently operating or currently producing. We know that to show a recession is signified or shown by our current level of output. This Q1 here is less than our QF, is to the left. We have to remember that these are number lines down here. number line here and a number line here. If our current level of output is less than our potential, we are in a recession. If we were to increase, and we'll just go ahead and start with aggregate demand here. So if we were to increase aggregate demand by, say, let's go with government spending going up. If government spending were to increase, we see aggregate demand shift to the right. We'll see that a couple things are occurring here. Price level is going up, and we're also seeing that we're now hitting our quantity at full employment. Well, increasing government spending. We're not technically in a recession, but a lot of people on the news channels like to say, oh, our economy's not doing so well. Why don't we just go ahead and increase our government spending? What's the trade-off here? What are some negative effects to just simply increasing government spending? Because right now we'll trade. Let's just increase government spending. We'll increase our real GDP output. What are some negative effects of this?
Inflation.
All right, so negative effect to just increasing government spending. We can see if government spending goes up, will eventually lead to an increase in price level, which is basically the same as an increase in inflation. What else? Very good. All right, so we're going to see an increase in interest rates. We'll see an increase in interest rates from this increase in government spending. What else?
Deficit.
Help lead us to a budget deficit. All right. So there are some positive things that occur from an increase in government spending. The positive things that occur, you'll see that output increases, and as output increases, what happens to unemployment?
Goes down.
Goes down. All right. So right here we've listed some negative things, but there are also some positive things. Some positive things that if you increase government spending, you would see that it increases real GDP, which essentially will decrease unemployment. But there are some negative trade-offs. You'll see prices going up, which basically is inflation going up. You'll see that this will lead to a budget deficit if we continue with this, if we're not bringing enough taxes, and that budget deficit will eventually lead to an increase in interest rates. And all right, we'll get to that in a little bit. We'll go back to this interest rates as soon as we come to the money market graph. All right, this same sort of relationship of increasing government spending, these negative consequences can also occur if you were to increase consumption. If you increase consumption, again, if you increase consumption, you'll see that there is a trade-off. We're increasing real GDP, which reduces unemployment. Price levels come up, inflation comes up. You'll see that it's going to occur with any single one of these. You know what? Let's go over with that money market graph here. This whole class is based on relationships, anyways. The AP exam is going to get into a little bit more in depth, and they're going to ask you about these things, about that whole process of a budget deficit leading to increase in interest rates. And then when interest rates go up, what happens to investment, guys? Goes down. What's that whole process known as? Crowding out. Crowding out. All right, so if we're going off the money market here, what do we have on this axis? The vertical axis here?
Nominal.
Nominal interest rates. Down here,
Quantity of money.
quantity of money.
Would they accept supply of money like you have
Yeah.
up there? Okay.
Say again? So we have the money market graph here. We have the vertical axis or vertical line, excuse me, of money supply, downward sloping line of money demand. What will move the money supply line?
More money.
Monetary policy. And who conducts monetary policy?
The Fed.
Federal Reserve. So the main goal of the Federal Reserve is to control the money supply. What's the most common tool? And you know what we'll try and do? We'll do loose money here or expansionary monetary policy. This whole idea of increasing the money supply. Loose money, expansionary monetary policy. So if we're going to try and increase the money supply, what's the most common tool?
Buy bonds on an open market.
So it would buy bonds in the open market. Very good. And second most common?
Low and reserve ratio. Reserve ratio.
Ooh, try again.
Discount rate.
There, the other one. That's right. It would decrease the discount rate. And then finally, what you guys just said. What is it?
Reserve.
Yeah, decrease the reserve requirement or reserve ratio. We're not talking about monetary policy right now. We'll come through to how an increase in government spending can affect interest rates. Demand of money. What does demand of money equal?
Asset demand plus transactional demand.
Very good. Asset demand plus transactional demand. Well, the government isn't holding on to cash as an asset. If they're increasing their spending, they're having more transactions. They're demanding this money so they can go out and purchase more, I don't know, whatever it is. Bless you. Whether they're building roads or blowing them up, whatever they do, they're needing more money. So if the government is increasing its spending, like over here, they're using this, what sort of policy is this again?
Expansion.
So we talked about monetary policy, moving the money supply. With government spending, what's the policy called?
Fiscal.
Fiscal policy, all right. I'll put it down here real quick. Fiscal policy, what the government can do, they can, if they're going to try, let's say that they're trying to increase aggregate demand, what are they going to do?
Lower taxes.
They could either lower their taxes, decrease taxes, or increase government spending. So let's say that we'll go over this point, increase government spending. They increase government spending, this expansionary fiscal policy, you're going to see will lead to a budget deficit. The government is spending more money than they're bringing in. They're going to need that money for transactional purposes. So they're going to go buy a bunch of tanks or whatever the hell it is. They're increasing their transactional demand. That means the money demand will increase. As money demand increases, interest rates go up. As interest rates go up, well, what's the definition of interest again?
Cost of
Cost of
borrowing money.
Cost of borrowing money. So the cost of borrowing money has gone up. If the cost of borrowing money has gone up, are households and businesses more likely or less likely to borrow money?
Less.
Less likely. So if they're less likely to borrow money, are we going to see? We're going to see these businesses borrow less money to purchase capital. You're going to see households borrow less money to purchase goods and services. So as they're purchasing less goods and services and businesses are purchasing less goods and services, you're going to see a slight decline in I sub G and C. When there's a slight decline, so you kind of come down here. It brings us back down. We see a slight decrease in output. Bless you. Slight decrease in prices. That whole process here of, hey, we're in a recession. Oh, I know, let's use government spending to get us out of this. Or you could say, let's increase government spending, or you could have decrease taxes, this expansionary fiscal policy. It's all trying to increase aggregate demand. That whole goal of, yes, let's have real GDP output go up. And when real GDP output goes up, unemployment goes down. That's our whole goal, right? Yes, but there's a consequence to this. The consequences are price levels. Price levels will increase as AD goes up. Price levels going up is the same as inflation going up. This will also cause a budget deficit to occur. This whole idea of increasing government spending and or decreasing taxes. When this occurs, you're going to see that the government needs more money for transactional demand. They're buying more goods and services. That'll increase money demand. As the money demand goes up, interest rates go up. Now it's more expensive to borrow money. It's more expensive to borrow money. You're going to see that businesses and households are borrowing less money, decreasing I sub G and C. What's that whole process known as? Crowding out. Okay. Questions on any of that? No? Went over crowding out?
Yeah, can you write like the whole thing for crowding out?
Like the step-by-step process? Alright, so kind of like a bullet format? Sure. Which side? You're over on this side, so look over here. So bullet format for crowding out. Economy. In recession. So goal is increase aggregate demand. They're going to use expansionary fiscal policy. What is expansionary fiscal policy? That would be increase. Go ahead. Oh yeah, go shout it out. What is
Increasing government spending?
increase government spending and or decrease taxes. So increasing government spending or decrease taxes. This would cause AD to increase. Why would AD increase? Well, AD equals government spending plus consumption plus gross investment plus net exports. If you kind of color code this, if we see government spending going up, well, that would just literally mean government spending going up. But why would a decrease in taxes, cause AD to go up? It would increase consumption. If your taxes are lower, you have more cash in your pocket. You have more cash in your pocket. If you have more discretionary income or disposable income, you're going to go out to the stores and go buy some more stuff. You're going to increase your consumption. So this right here would increase AD. By increasing AD, we know that a couple things are going to occur. This isn't really, they're not going to ask you really about this so much on the AP exam, but we do know that it's going to increase real GDP, which is essentially a decrease in unemployment. Also, as a side note, you're going to see that there's going to be an increase in price levels, which is essentially an increase in inflation. as this occurs, this AD going up, there's also a couple of other things that are occurring. We know that this will cause, essentially, if you increase government spending, decrease taxes, what sort of budget will occur?
Deficit.
Yeah, it's going to lead to, it'll lead to a budget deficit. You're going to see that the money demand will increase due to an increase in transactional demand. And as there's an increase in this transactional demand, this causes an increase in interest rates. And then finally, as there's an increase in interest rates, that means it's more expensive to borrow money. If it's more expensive to borrow money, you'll see that the investment businesses will invest less, households will purchase less products. So there will be a decrease in businesses borrowing money. There'll be a decrease in households borrowing money. So there'll be a decrease in I sub G and C. So this will bring down aggregate demand. But it's only going to bring it down a little bit. You'll notice that we started off in this recession, government spending brought it all the way up here to that equilibrium point, and then when we decreased AD came down just a little bit. Overall, there was still an increase in AD, there was still an overall increase in real GDP, but it didn't reach the full amount yet.
So would exports decrease also due to an increase in inflation?
You're asking, will exports decrease? Technically, yes. So we can take this whole thing, this process right here, as crowding out. And the question will, what will happen to, we saw that eventually we're going to see AD equals I sub G plus C plus G plus X sub N. We see that, C comes down a little bit and I sub G comes down a little bit. Your question was, what will happen to net exports? And what happens to net exports, guys?
Goes down.
It goes down. We're going to see that eventually this process of expansionary fiscal policy will lead to a decline in exports. Anybody tell me why?
Because our products seem more expensive compared to other countries.
Our currency.
What about our currency? So walk me through it. So basically,
I really don't know, I just yelled it.
all right, fair enough, fair enough. So crowding out follows that same process as another process that we're
Net export effect.
net export effect. Very good. So we are going to see that for the net export effect. I'll try and do that one in blue here. It's going to lead to the same sort of thing, but we'll have to add a foreign exchange graph. All right. So net export effect. So with a net export effect, we're going to see that it starts off the same way. Our economy is in a recession. Goal is to increase aggregate demand. We're going to use expansionary fiscal policy, increasing government spending or decreasing taxes. That's going to drive aggregate demand up. So you see either government spending and or consumption going up, real GDP goes up, unemployment goes down, price level up, inflation up, causes a budget deficit. These increase in money demand due to an increase in transactional demand causes interest rates to go up. Right there, that's where it kind of stops. Their crowding out and net export are identical up to this point. Bless you. After this, you're going to see For crowding out, you'll see that we're actually crowding out this whole idea. Mainly, you're crowding out this. It's the crowding out private domestic investment. That's what they're referencing here. They're crowding that out. Actually, I don't want to confuse people with the blue there, but so you're crowding out that private domestic investment. When we get to the net export effect, this is what we're going to do. We branch off. We see those higher interest rates. There's a relationship here. Just crowding out. We see that as interest rates go up due to the increase in the money demand. Interest rates go up. How does an increase in interest rates affect the value of a country's currency?
Increase.
Increase. You have a question? Oh, is that you're going to, sorry, answer? Sorry. All right, so an increase in interest rates will cause increase in the value of country currency. All right. As the value of a country's currency increases, what will happen to their net exports? Or what will happen to their exports, I should say?
Go down. Decrease.
Yeah, this increase in the value of a country's currency will cause exports to decline. Why?
Because goods seem more expensive.
Yes, the exports will decline because goods seem more expensive. All right. Why is it that when interest rates go up, the value of a country's currency goes up? Well, why is it that when interest rates go up, the value of a country's currency goes up?
Higher rate of return.
Ah, there we go, that higher rate of return. Oh, yes. So let's just take the United States, their dollar, and we'll compare it to the euro. So we'll have up here, drawing the foreign exchange graph, we'll have the supply of the dollar, demand of the dollar, the exchange rate. So we have our foreign exchange graph right here. Domestically, we borrow money. Internationally, we invest. Domestically, we borrow money. Internationally, we invest. When you borrow money, you want to borrow at low interest rates. When you invest, you want to invest at high interest rates. So we got interest rates going up here in the United States because of our increase in government spending, which causes an increase in the demand of money. So let's have, this is going to be video evidence that I can't draw. All right, so we have the United States here and
It's one of your better ones. Actually.
Europe. Thank you. I'm trying here, man. I'm on video. All right, so in the United States, interest rates go up. Say they go from 3% to 7%, whatever, something really high. But in Europe, the interest rates stay at that 3%. Well, if you're a European and you got some extra cash, what do you want to do with your money? Buy a hat. You're going to want to invest it. Where do you want to invest it? Do you want to invest it into the European economy that's returning 3%, or do you want to invest it into the American economy returning 7%?
American.
Yay. Buy American, right? All right, so what will you need to do? Are businesses going to accept your euros? No. So you would have to because of these higher interest rates and you're seeking that higher rate of return, you're going to have to supply your euros, and this graph doesn't show the supply of the euro. This graph shows the supply of the dollar, the demand of the dollar, because right here it's in terms of the dollar. It's hurting my knees. So you'll have to supply your dollar, and when you supply your dollar, what are you going to demand? When you supply your euro,
You want the American dollar.
you're going to demand the dollar. Yay! I'm sorry, what? So, essentially, you're going to be supplying your euros and then trying to demand the dollar. As you demand the dollar, increase in the demand of the dollar here. Demand of the dollar goes up. As that demand for the dollar increases, you'll see that the exchange rate causes the dollar to appreciate in value. So this whole idea that interest rates go up will cause the value of a country's currency to go up because foreigners seeking that higher rate of return. As this occurs, it will now take more euros to get a dollar. Because it takes more euros to get a dollar, U.S. products will seem more expensive to Europeans. The goods seem more expensive to Europeans, so like, screw that, I'm not going to buy your stuff. Exports decline. As those exports decline, exports go down, that causes AD to come down just a little bit. So graphically, net export effect and crowding out, same thing. Yeah?
If taxes go down in the expansionary fiscal policy, if they lowered specifically business taxes,
Oh,
and wouldn't that increase AS as well?
so we're looking for something very specific here. If you're trying to decrease business taxes, you would see aggregate supply increase. You would also see that there's less revenue being brought in to the government. So it would eventually create that whole idea of a budget deficit. You would see the interest rates rising, but you're correct in bringing up the point that if business taxes, specifically the supply side, and that's the way the AP exam is going to reference it, the supply side economics were to decrease the business taxes, it would cause aggregate supply to increase. They're trying to, by decreasing business taxes, they're trying to promote and hopefully encourage businesses saying, hey, you have all this extra money, let's go ahead and use that extra money to purchase capital. The government can't force businesses to go out and spend money on capital or force businesses to go out and hire new workers and expand and grow. Remember, this is the whole idea of, we turn around and check out that poster back up, the Keynesian view. They believe that I sub G is unstable. We can't force businesses to increase in gross investment, but we can simply say, all right, we know that we can inject government spending out there. Yes, ma'am? Yeah. No question. Need to ask him. Any other questions so far? No? Yes?
On the ADAS graph, you can have the economy go past LRAS.
So the view of can you have the economy produce more than its potential output?
Yeah.
For short periods of time, yes. But in the long run, we'll always come back to equilibrium.
Just because the economy just self-corrects.
The economy self-corrects. The classical view, the economy will self-correct due to what will cause the economy to self-correct under the classical view, guys?
Progressive income.
high prices.
Something's flexible.
Prices are sticky.
Flexible,
Prices and wages.
Something.
flexible prices and wages. Flexible prices and wages.
Alright.
All right, under the classical view, yes, the economy is self-correcting, will come back to equilibrium because of those flexible prices and wages. Other questions?
Can we go over the classical?
Yeah, well, let me go ahead and show, all right, if you guys have cameras, can we go ahead and shut them off now for a second, because I'll start erasing the boards and all that. I don't want to kill your batteries. So there's like 3 of them over here. And I will tell you that this is extremely